Hey there, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. And this is Huck, the executive producer. All these people asked for her this weekend. They said, hey, where is Huck been? Well, she's always around, full of love, and just a good girl. Hey, can you shake? Hey, shake. Oh, that's a good girl. That's a good girl. Okay, can Daddy do his show now? I know you want scratches and loves, but can I do my show now? Okay? That's okay. Here we go. Come on. That's a good girl. You want to go outside? You want to go? You can go. You can go. You want to stick around, or what do you want to do? Alrighty then. Away we go. You can stick around. Huck wants to watch. Well, this is going to be a good show, so I can tell you that a lot of content in this show, so you should like it. And let me first tell you a little bit about the Denver show I just came from, and talked mostly about topics unrelated to missing people. It was a Bigfoot conference put on by a friend of mine at the Sasquatch Outpost. Harvey Pratt was in town. It was a really good conference, and thanks for Jim Myers for putting it on. A lot of people are still asking about the Alaska Bigfoot cruise. Just Google Alaska Bigfoot cruise. It'll come up. And I just talked to the organizer this morning. They've got a good turnout. They're excited, but there's still some cabins available. So check it out. And I am going to go fishing on that cruise. It's going to be a shore excursion where I'm going to take some people with me. And we were talking about the specifics about that. It'll be fun. It'll be a really good time. Now, Missing 411, the UFO Connection. I saw some numbers today. And on YouTube, I have 402,000 subscribers. On Twitter, I'm almost right at 40,000. Unbelievably, not even 10% of the people who follow me on YouTube right here have watched the movie. It's like $4 or $5 to watch it. I don't get it. It's 5 stars, 5 out of 5 on Amazon. You can go there and watch it. You can go, and if you're in Canada, you can watch it on iTunes or Vimeo. So if you're following me here and you're watching this, why wouldn't you watch it for $5? I mean, I don't get it. But the turnout, it's better than the first 2 movies, but the people who do the distribution are a little confused about why so few people have watched it based on the following I have. And I think that's what they're confused about. And it's not that they don't believe Amazon. They just, I think, are baffled. And we talked about it this morning. So I don't know what it is. But I've asked many people that if you do watch it on Amazon, please go put an Amazon review on, because that's kind of where everyone goes in the world when they're checking a movie or thinking about buying a book. They go and they read the reviews on Amazon. So I'm not a big proponent of Amazon, and my business has nothing related to Amazon, but the distributors put the movie on there, so I have to just follow what they say. So got some pretty cool letters this week. First one. Hey Dave, I ordered the documentary tonight and just finished it. I'm blown away. You did an outstanding job tying all issues together. He's talking about Missing 411, the UFO Connection. I have a couple of questions if you can get the time to read this. Obviously, I've got the time. I'm not sure if you will be able to get more info out of Carl, but did he say why he took the pills? So Carl, in the movie, he died about 4 or 5 months ago. And I was really saddened to hear that. A really, really good man. And I did ask him. And he said, you know, Dave, I was hungry, but I couldn't tell you why I took it. I just had this overwhelming sense that I should take it. Okay. Was he threatened? No, he was never threatened. Forced? No. Thanks, Dave, and I look forward to any and all of your future work. Thank you. No, Carl and I had several long conversations, and he actually believed the aliens were not there to harm him. But one of the last questions I did ask that was in the movie is, I said, well, Carl, was the implication that if you didn't have a vasectomy, that they were going to keep you? I think this light bulb went off in his head, and he kind of giggled and goes, yeah. So, not sure if those aliens had his best interests at heart. And out of all the times that he went hunting, that was the only time he ever went without his wife. I found that really strange. So, please watch the movie. Next letter. Hey, Dave. I'm a new follower from Belgium. Apparently 1 in a million. I follow you on YouTube and read some of your books. Love your work and dedication to the honorable missing people cause. I've just seen your last film, Missing 411, the UFO Connection. Excellent work. Well, thank you. I'm also very interested in your input on factual news, geopolitical strategies and inferences, things that go on in the States and will be coming to or are already implemented in Europe. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap there, isn't it? I'm also very interested, some of my background. I'm a 45-year-old born South African. My parents were Belgians and I have a German ancestry. I have lived 18 years and had basic education done in South Africa. Lived in an English-speaking environment and had some college education done in Vancouver, Canada. I came to know you in the late 90s on a late-night radio talk show. He didn't write this, but it would have been Coast to Coast AM. I'm a self-learned French speaker and working in the Belgian army for 10 years. Boots on the ground, mainly demining engineering work, and now I work in human resources. Boy, that's quite a change, going from finding mines in the ground to working in human resources. There's a lot of landmines in human resources, though. Anyhow, while doing mining work in an area contaminated by unexploded ordnances in Lebanon, I later, after action, found myself thinking about some unexplained protection. One day, while working a demining lane, scanning the ground with my metal detector, I lightly touched a small bush, which moved a bit, and at the same time detected a later confirmed unexploded ordnance. I literally saw the ordnance moving slowly towards me, same color as the dirt. It was laying on the ground next to the bush with the copper-plated explosive dart facing me. The firing pin was free to fire, but it did not. Maybe something or someone protected me that day. Or was it pure coincidence? I continued to depollute and demine the Lebanon-Israel border for some time afterwards with similar incidents. That's pretty strange. My cousin has a small business dealing with exotourism. He works with pendulums, healing stones, prayers, and white sage. He has been overwhelmed with the sheer number of clients due to psychological disorders and general mental state. This has been amplified by recent events in the world and state of the world at the present time. He guides his clients in his alternative way, sometimes liberating some hitchhiker entities, and has many positive feedbacks. Made me think about your interview with Jonathan Dover at your premiere. I love that interview. If you haven't seen that, it's in these videos. There's 430 videos here, but if you go down just maybe 10 or 12, you'll see Jonathan Dover interview at the premiere. Sorry for the loss of your son. God bless him. Maybe this will help you in some way. It helped me with my losses. My cousin told me one day, to help the souls that leave this world, our self-centered sadness retains their souls for evolution to and from another world. It's the hardest thing to do, but we have to pray to permit them to and liberate themselves from us and ourselves from them and to move on, to evolve. Something is bigger than us, and I feel sometimes the guiding spirits or guardian angels are protecting us. In my case, too many positive coincidences each time I'm faced by dangers and adversities. Sometimes I feel that our ancestors or passed away are our guardian angels. I meditate and pray for those who have crossed my path, and for those who wish me bad things and those who wish me well. I send them with my prayers and the spiritual guidance they need. Thank you for telling the villagers to do good actions every day. We are so negatively oriented these days. We need a generation of solution finders and constructive thinkers. God bless and protect you. Thank you. Couple things. We do live in a very negative environment right now. If you think about the mental health challenges people have, the amount of homelessness there is, people tend to hang their head low when they walk around. It's very, very sad sometimes. And I know some people that are going through this, and it's a huge challenge. And I tell people every day, part of the cure to this is to get out, socialize, be active. And I don't mean run 10 miles every day. Be active. Get outside. Force yourself to socialize. And get a job. Big proponent of this. I follow Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. I think that man talks a lot of sense. And if you listen to him and you listen to his history, and I think he speaks from a point of understanding and educated. Next one. Hey Dave, first of all, I would like to commend you and thank you for the work you have done regarding missing people, and more specifically the 411 subject as a whole. You have sparked the public interest and planted the knowledge firmly in the social conscious. Your tenacity and dedication in the field is admirable. Thank you. I have a bit of an odd story I'd like to share with you. I'm not sure if or when you'll get around to reading this. I'm reading it right now. However, I'd like to share it with someone who has as much field experience with high strangeness as yourself. While not directly related to a missing persons case, I feel on reflection it may have some relation or implication for a phenomena such as a whole. To frame the story, I will say that at the time it occurred, I was a prison officer at a high security jail in Manchester, England. And my dad was serving as a police officer in a town about an hour away. We were both of sound mind and generally very logical thinkers. I know you have a law enforcement background, and I hope this lends some credibility to my case. Now on to the story. My dad and I are both very regimented with physical exercise. It was a lifestyle my grandfather pursued, followed by my father and then me. As such, my dad's home garage is a gym of sorts, equipped with everything he needs, without the shine and polish, but I've come to prefer the cold, rusty weights anyway. Now, the garage itself is not exceptional in any way. It is a detached red brick building, and to give a sort of size reference, it would allow 2 cars to park behind one another inside. Just enough room on either side to get out. It has 2 windows, a low ceiling, and an old wardrobe mirrors attached around some of the bare walls. At the time, for me and my dad would train regularly, and sometimes we would be in there exercising at the same time. Other times we'd be alone. An important part of the regular exercise would be to keep a log of it on a personal notepad. On the notepad, we would create a table with exercises, weights, and repetitions to keep track of our personal progress or regression. Now, we didn't have a ruler, instead utilized the flat side of an old hacksaw blade, which we hung on a nail above the interior window, which provided the place for our writing, a pivotal point in this story. Every session, the vertical line would be drawn, the blade would be placed back, and the exercise routine would be completed. That is until one day I went to reach for the blade only to discover it was gone. For a week or so, my training days missed my dad's, and in between work, I had not had the opportunity to speak to him. I noted that the blade had been moved and presumed he had used it for some project. Although it was wholly unsuited, blunt, marked by paint, and slightly bent from years of use, as it turned out, my dad had thought I had moved the blade. Although it was a minor annoyance and inconvenience, we both simply utilized the straight edges of other items to fulfill that need. Now, on this particular day, I entered the garage to find my dad already partway through his exercise routine. Heavy music playing in the background. Perfect. That's the way I like to exercise. We both found it amusing, and we had presumed the other had misplaced it. We also found it somewhat strange that neither of us were responsible for it being moved. Being law enforcement, we decided that we would simply search the garage. Of course, a couple law enforcement guys going through the garage. My experience searching cells and prisoners, combined with his years of searching houses, cars, fields, and the like, would surely turn up the missing blade. If it was here, there was no chance we wouldn't find it. I began to search the rear of the garage, an area with some gym equipment, and to the left and to the right a clothes dryer, some stacked plastic crates filled with painting tools, wallpapering items, etc. And some of which was fairly organized with drawers containing screws, mouse traps, wires, fuses, and the usual garage stuff. At the top end of the garage was more open, having a few more bits of old welded together gym equipment. Now, this sounds like my kind of raw talent. A bench press, leg press, weights, dumbbells, and a red rusted metal shelving unit filled with tins and cardboard boxes. Eventually, after some time, we both met face to face in what was the middle of the garage in our search. We had both exhausted our area of search to the extent of our skills and were now further perplexed that we had still come up short. While looking right at each other, we heard a faint thud on the ground. Looking down, we were in disbelief to see the hacksaw blade on the ground, neatly dropped in the space right between us. That would have freaked me out. I would have immediately been looking up. We were both shocked by this, and I remember we actually laughed about the occurrence at the time, perhaps out of nervousness more than amusement. After some immediate investigation, we both concluded that we couldn't explain what just happened, albeit there was no logical explanation within our understanding of reality. Did a portal just open up and take that? And then drop it? I've often thought about this event in my life. Indeed, after telling people about it, I have found that many opened up about their odd experiences. This made for the great passing of time in an old Victorian jail while on night shifts. What disturbed me the most wasn't so much that something disappeared and reappeared. What I find unsettling is that there seemed to be an understanding behind it, an intent. Pay attention. It felt as though something had observed our behavior and noted perhaps unconventional use of an instrument. In response, the said instrument was removed to once again observe our reaction or to induce frustration, followed by whatever had removed the item, found our search and emotions amusing and seemingly enjoying making fools out of the both of us by simply dropping it between literally under our noses. As if to say, quote, "I had this all along and you two have been wasting your time searching. It's right here." End of quotes. The comparative feeling I experienced was that of a dog playing fetch with a ball, only to see my master pretend to throw it and instead hide it behind his back, leaving me in a state of confusion. I do that with Huck. Shh, don't tell her. Before the ball is magically revealed in its hand. It may seem irrelevant, but simply replace the saw blade in my story with a human being and it becomes a much more troubling and applicable part to your research. If something sees us as objects, then what's the difference between making a person disappear and reappear or an inanimate object? The saw blade disappeared again a few years ago. Thank you for your time. Keep up the great work and pursuit of the truth. I like that story. Here's why. It makes you think. Just like you said, something with intellect was behind that. Were they watching the behavior of the father and son, seeing maybe how methodical they could be in the search? Now, the entity could have put it down and allowed them to find it during the search, but they didn't do that. They waited till they were all done and they put it in a position where they would both see it all of a sudden appearing, meaning it wasn't overlooked, which is a very unusual part of this. Because as far as people are concerned, nobody ever sees them magically appear in front of people. But that blade did. I like the thinking part where he puts, instead of the blade, think of it as a person. There's a big search for the people, and then it turns up in an area that had been previously searched. Thanks for the story. Next one. Hey, Mr. Paulides, I'm a huge fan of your work and don't miss a video. Before sharing my stories, I'd like to first say that you're an amazing person, and I'm sure that the work you are doing is helping a great many people. Your honest and open-mindedness is inspiring to me, and your struggles and your reaction to them have given me the strength in the face of my own. Thank you. I'm from Australia. I've lived here my whole life, and I've seen many different things that sit outside the realm of a normal experience. My family lives on the Sunshine Coast, hinterland on 3 acres, and I believe personally that we are living on land that something uses to travel through. Around the time I was 19, about 2007, 2008, I was on my parents' back land staying in what used to be my brother's room. It was a renovation on the side of the house made out of recycled windows from ceiling to floor. A simple tin roof overhead. My bed laid at one end of the room, and sleeping in it felt like you were in the trees. You could hear everything outside. One night as I laid in bed, I was doing breathing exercises and preparing my mind to rest. The nights are warm for most of the year, so I was laying virtually naked without a blanket at night. Without any sound of approach or any warning at all, I heard something that sounded like garbled speech, almost directly in my ear. Our house has 2 stories, and all my ear had to be was 10 feet off the ground. When this sound happened, every molecule in my body froze. It was deeper than fear. It was as if the voice spoke. I had been asked a question like, "What are you doing?" But it was just a feeling. I had not been addressed or spoken to. It was far too directional and close. I wish to this day that I had the courage to turn my head and look at whatever it was. Then again, maybe not. Many years later, while watching your film The Hunted, I got to the Sierra Sounds part and almost jumped out of my skin. It wasn't the exact sound I heard because the being in the Sierra Sounds was yelling, excited. What I heard was like a calm version of the same voice. When I went to imitate the sounds to my girlfriend, she said something that stuck in my head. She told me that she had gone to church as a young woman. Some of the kids used to speak in tongues. It is, as far as I know, the only thing similar to the kinds of speech patterns that I heard that night. Since then, I have paid much greater attention to my parents' property, and a few things have happened. We have found thin, finger-thick tree branches stuck in the ground in an open field in such a way that defies all logic. They aren't big enough or have enough mass to pinch into the soil from a fall, and they are often driven 4 to 6 inches into the ground. You would honestly be lucky to drive the tip of a pickaxe into the ground 4 inches here, as the soil is mostly rock and clay. My father also awoke in the night to what he said sounded like muffled speech and lumber being tossed around. He said the only thing he could think of with making the sound were those old wooden staircases in our house that are sitting in disrepair down behind our shed. I've thought about your sticky tape method for gathering evidence, and I intend to give it a go. I managed to recover anything of value, I'll let you know. If I may briefly speculate about all this, perhaps the language I heard was the language we all spoke before the Tower of Babel was destroyed, from a time when it was said that we all spoke the same language. People often talk about these entities as if they exist outside or on the fringe of reality. Well, what if it is us that is on the fringe? What if we humans have lost our connection to reality and nature? Perhaps our world of bright lights and technology has blinded us to our own self-knowledge. I like to imagine what we must look like to something that exists inside of our society or outside of our society, whether it be a Yowie, Sasquatch, or alien, or something else. We're madly giving ourselves to a structure that scarcely benefits us. We use every frequency available to us to transmit dissonance and negativity. We use countless toxic materials across almost infinite different applications to kill us and the life around us. Perhaps whenever humanity became the servant to this system, other humans decided to walk a different path. Thanks for everything, Dave. Wow. That's pretty darn good. And you know, talk about the poisons we put in our body. I can think back when Submarine Shop, a real famous one, was serving bread that wasn't even bread. It was made with other things. Eventually they got it out. But they didn't volunteer this to us. And if you go somewhere and you eat something, you are at their mercy about what you're eating. And sometimes when we go to a store and let's say we just want some crackers or want to get a piece of salami, I do this all the time. And I wish you would start. And that would be start reading what's inside of what you're eating. Yeah, read it. And if you read things and you can't pronounce them, you probably shouldn't buy it. If you don't understand what it is, it's probably not good for you. And that is something I learned a long time ago. Now, I'm like everybody else. I like all the kind of food you like. And I try to be very, very careful where I eat, what I eat, and then every once in a while, I just have an off day and I go crazy just like everyone else. But I try to limit those to once a week. And the rest of the time, I try to eat pretty healthy. Next story. Hey Dave, I think you might be interested in my story about when I and my son helped a local search and rescue team train. This is interesting. They wanted people to hide so the dogs could find them. My son and I volunteered. I was in awe then and to this day about the dogs were able to do. It was amazing. Below, I'll share a hide and seek event. 8 a.m. we were asked to rub several gauze pads on our skin under our shirt, back of the neck, under the arms. These were then placed in a sealed sandwich bag. We were then driven in a car to a Home Depot parking lot and asked to walk a quarter of a mile through the woods, each in a different direction, taking a different path to end up under a parking garage in a business office nearby. My path was kind of a beeline to the parking garage, but my son took a varied route, crossing back over his own trail and back and forth across to a nearby street, through a creek. After we arrived in the parking garage, he put us in a car and took us back to the original building from that morning. 4 hours later, they took us back to the garage, and the dogs were set out from the Home Depot after smelling our scent pads. In the garage, we were at quite a distance and could see the dogs smelling our scent. One bloodhound was on my scent and the next one was on my son's. We could see them and their handler making a way through the woods, across the road, doubling back, over the creek, through the creek, and under the garage. The dog had to put his paw on the person that he tracked. They explained that this was a challenge because my son and I had the same laundry detergent, been together all day, lived in the same house, were blood related. However, each dog indicated the exact one that they trailed with just that one whiff of our scent article. I hope this scenario helps others see the abilities these dogs have and how insane it is that they can't find a missing person. Thank you for that. Something I say all the time. This is not normal. Now, I know that there's a lot of search and rescue people that watch this show. And many of you have a difficult time talking to supervisors about what we talk about here because it's embarrassing. But I also know that during my time in law enforcement, I worked with a lot of different departments on different scenarios, mutual aid. I saw a lot of different dogs that policemen had. And how good that dog is directly related to how much they train and how good their training is. I've stated before that in my time on hundreds of searches, we never did not find the person, which is weird. But that's how good these dogs were trained. But then again, I've been on several searches with other departments where I could just look at the dog and the dog didn't want to work, dog was uninterested, dog wasn't focused, dog wasn't trained. And that's too bad. And these are police officers and sheriff's deputies that are full-time paid. Now you have search and rescue people who aren't paid and it's all volunteer and they're bringing their dogs in. So they have to do this all for free in their spare time. To get a good dog out of that really takes commitment on the part of the search and rescue member. And it takes them searching out good training from other people, namely law enforcement, etc. All right, got some interesting cases today. Got some current cases and we have some older cases. But none of these cases, except one, came out of my books. We're going to talk about several. First case is in Idaho, and it isn't in the Idaho book. This is a new case that we found not too long ago. The man's name was Frank Stickler, 60 years old, went missing January 25th, 1902. He lived in a little town called Warren, Idaho, kind of southeast from Riggins, Idaho. And Riggins is an area I've been in where another person disappeared near the Snake River. But this person was a placer miner and a potato farmer in Idaho. And this was way back in 1902. And it's important to understand the backstory on this. Warren was just a little tiny town back then. It's still not very big today. So this is Riggins. This is the Snake River over here. This is McCall. So almost directly east of McCall is Thunder Mountain. Here's Warren. This is where the person went missing, and I'll get to how that came into being. But the person lived in Warren, hiked to this area, they split up, and I'll get to how this all happened. So the backstory is that there was a business owner in Warren, Idaho, who owned a livery business, kind of a wealthy guy. And he hired a man named Joe Davis, who was a prospector, to travel up to that Thunder Mountain location to access a claim and do an assessment of the claim. This was during the winter. And he told Joe, the livery man told Joe that, hey, as a gift, I'm going to send somebody up to that claim at Christmas time with a bottle of whiskey for you. And he goes, hey, that's great. So not a lot of people wanted to make that trip in the middle of winter, but Frank Stickler did. Frank heard about it. And then the owner of this mine or claim said he was going to give him $50. And it was almost $1 for every mile. It was about a 25-mile trip up and about a 25-mile trip back. So $1 a mile. And Stickler said he could probably do it in 2 or 3 days up and back. Well, another man named Dan McRae decided he was going to travel with Stickler from Warren to the Salmon River and to the fork of a place called Elk Creek. And that was about 12 miles into the trip. And they came to that location, and McRae went on his way to Smith Creek, and Stickler went up to Thunder Mountain. That was the last time Stickler was ever seen. And that was peculiar. Remember? Point of separation. So Stickler thought, and told McRae he thought he could do that 13 miles up to the point of the mountain where the assessment was in one day. Now during that time, weather was rough. There's a lot of snow. People describe Stickler as wearing real warm clothing, but not a lot of provisions. So fast forward, so this was, the pair left on on December 21st, 1901. 2 days later, Stickler separates from McCrae, and then fast forward a month to January 25th, Joe Davis, the guy who was supposed to get the whiskey, comes down into Warren to resupply and make his reports. And he runs into the livery stable owner and he goes, "Hey, how'd you like my bottle of whiskey?" And the guy goes, "I didn't get any whiskey. Nobody came up there." So the town rallied and they sent dozens and dozens of people up that trail looking for Frank Stickler. Well, while they were searching, the weather was bad, more snow. They searched for a week, which is a phenomenal amount of time, knowing the distance on that trail. They didn't find anything. So they went back the following year and they searched again in the springtime. After the snow had gone, they didn't find anything. Very strange story. You have a good portion of the hike was done next to creeks and rivers. You have point of separation, you have weather, and you have the fact that neither one of these people were ever, or Frank Stickler was never found. What happened to him? It's a very good question. And I don't have a good answer for it. But it fit too many of the profile points to ignore. The next case happened in my home state here, Montana. Again, not in the Montana book, an entirely new story. Involved a young man named John Glynn, Glynn, from Ireland, 17 years old. He went missing October 29th, 1901. Not far before Frank Stickler disappeared in just the state right next to us. Now, on October 29th, John went with his uncles to the headwaters of what's called Mill Creek, and it's a grassy hill area above Anaconda, Montana. If you've never been to this area, pretty rough zone up there. This is Anaconda right here. This is Highway 1. This is Highway 90 over here. Fairmont Hot Springs Resort. And this is the upper headwaters of Mill Creek where they were hunting. So a 17-year-old is with his uncles. The uncle's sister, which is Joe's mom, was in Ireland, and the uncles had him here for a year working. So John and his uncle, M.J. Moran, and John Waugh, they split up and they were going to hunt different areas. Well, they all decided they were going to show up at the middle of an area down below later that day. Well, the two uncles appeared and John didn't. And it was snowing during this time. It was pretty bad weather. So the uncles rally the city of Anaconda and they get 50 people to come up and look for John, 17 years old. Now, the last time they saw him is he was hiking adjacent to Mill Creek. Not a deep place up high at all. And the organization by Moran and Waugh was huge, and it went on for days. The uncles got frustrated, couldn't find him, didn't understand where he could be, and they posted a $50 reward, which got even more people to come out. Well, the weather got worse. They had to cancel the search. And then on February 28th, 1902, a body was found in the local river down in Anaconda. And there were some rumors that the body was related to John Glynn. In reality, there was never any substantiation it was, and he was never found. Now, why is this story important? Well, first of all, John was young, 17. He was in phenomenal shape, a lot of energy, dressed very warm. He was hunting. Weather got bad. Point of separation. Hunting next to water, a creek. And the local town got bloodhounds to come in and work the area where the uncle split from John. And they never found him. Very, very strange story for that area of Montana for sure. Not in my book, totally new. Now, the next stories are much more recent. In fact, days ago. And many of you wrote to me about these. Now, I don't like to talk about disappearances that happen within a couple weeks, because all of the facts in the case don't shake out. But so many of you wrote to me about this, and there were some oddities about it that I'll tell you about it, but I'm not saying it's a 411 case. But in the area, there are several missing 411 cases. So it's worth talking about. The first case involves kind of a famous person. His name was Julian Sands. This is Julian. You might recognize him. He went missing January 13th, 2023 from Baldy Bowl Trailhead in Mount Baldy in San Bernardino County, very near Los Angeles. Now, Julian was born in West Yorkshire, United Kingdom, and in the 80s he moved to West Hollywood to pursue acting. He married a woman named Eugenia Sikowitz, and they had a son, Henry, and 2 daughters. He has notoriety. He made a film called Room with a View, Warlock, Leaving Las Vegas, Killing Fields, Naked Lunch, Ocean's 13, and in TV he appeared on Smallville and Dexter. Well, on the 13th he went to Mount Baldy, and he didn't, a couple of things here that are peculiar. He either hadn't been reading the local news or didn't know that in the previous 4 weeks, 2 people had died on that mountain or in that area. And there had been 14 search and rescues because of weather and dangerous conditions. And just a week earlier, when he went missing, a woman fell to her death on Mount Baldy. The conditions there were described as really, really dangerous snow and ice. Well, when Julian didn't come back that night, his family called search and rescue. San Bernardino County Sheriff went up, and they found his car parked exactly at that Baldy Bowl trailhead where he said he'd go. Well, searchers rallied quickly, and there was an immediate close-in search. The next day, Saturday the 14th, they went up the trailhead, and the search and rescue determined it was too dangerous to proceed. Now you might think, well, how dangerous can it be? That area, for some reason, is really dangerous. I've never been there in the winter, been there in the summer, but in the wintertime, they've actually had a search and rescue member die from falling just within the last 3 years. So after just one day of searching, they pulled everybody out, and they put some drones up the next couple days, but they didn't see anything. You got to understand Julian. He was a special guy. I mean, for being 65 years old, the man was in phenomenal shape. And he always loved going to the mountains. And he always loved hiking and mountaineering. Conquered several dangerous peaks in his time. Now, the area that he went missing in is a cluster zone, which is important. So this area right here, Baldy Peak, LA would be down below in the picture, below the mountains. In this area, several people are missing that I've written about. Keep that thought. So Julian disappears on January 13th. On the same day that he left to go hiking, another man named Robert Gregory, this is Robert, same day now, 10 miles away from Julian, 61-year-old Robert Gregory, hometown of Hawthorne, California, described of his family as very cautious, super experienced hiker, been to this area near Crystal Lake and Mount Islip many times. He actually mapped the route he was going to be on, gave it to his family. When he didn't return, Hawthorne police were called and they were running the search and rescue. He was described as being in exceptional shape. Again, weather events inundated the area. They couldn't search extensively because of the weather and the danger involved in the event. He wasn't found. Important here. And this maps sometimes mean everything. So Julian disappears here, just 10 air miles away. It's not far, folks. Robert Gregory is down around this lakes area, and he disappears under Mount Islip. So, this area, several disappearances. Now, so this is 10 miles, about 5 miles further east from where Robert disappeared. In 1998, there was a man named Jonathan Aujay. Jonathan, LA County Sheriff. And he took a daily run in an area called the Devil's Punch Bowl. He was off duty. He worked in an area of the sheriff's department that responded to big events on a nightly occurrence. It wasn't a super secret type thing, and he didn't execute super secret warrants, but he disappeared on his run. LA sheriffs, LAPD, and multiple sheriff's departments searched this area for weeks. Weeks. It's been 25 years. He's never been found. Now, after Jonathan disappeared, the local sheriff's department in that area, I'll show it to you again, started a task force. So this is the Devil's Punch Bowl nature area. And this is the area he was running that he vanished from. Now, he worked on the other side of the mountains in LA County Sheriff's. Remember what I wrote a book called The Devil's in the Detail. Missing 411, The Devil's in the Detail. Why is that? Because I saw an inordinate number of people who would disappear in areas with that name Devil in it. I didn't try to find the cases, they found me. Now, Jonathan is one of the very few law enforcement people to ever disappear. It's very strange. As many people associated with law enforcement I know that go to the mountains, compared to the number who have disappeared, really low. Not sure what that means. But the more disgusting thing to me is that Jonathan's never been found. Now, there were some rumors that there was a possibility that maybe he had been targeted by some cartel, or he saw a drug dealer or deal on the trail, or he stumbled onto a lab or something. None of it made sense, because if he would have stumbled onto a lab, there would have been remnants of that lab on the side of the mountain, precursors in the dirt, etc. I don't believe that. But they did start a task force on that side of the mountain that lasted for almost a year, trying to develop leads on maybe if a criminal case had happened with him. They never got anything. It's one of the stranger disappearances I've ever worked, meaning I got into that hard trying to find things. The story's in Missing 411 Western United States. But let's look at this again. There's many other cases in this area. And when you look at the cluster map, this whole area is just inundated with people, young and old. Now, the mountains in this area, coming from, I lived 10 years in Colorado, where we have 14ers and almost mountains are straight up and down. And people make a big deal about this area, saying, oh, how dangerous it is. And honestly, I don't think it's that dangerous. I mean, I could see ice and snow making it dangerous and you could slip, but I don't understand why the bodies are never found. Because as I've told you before, cadaver dogs can find bodies miles and miles away. And knowing that's the case, and not understanding why those bloodhounds can't pick up the body scent when it's in that area. But then we go back to what we talked about in the movie. Maybe they aren't there. Maybe there's something else at play that we don't understand. And like the story we talked about earlier with the hacksaw blade, is there something else involved, some other intelligence that is just playing with us? Now, if you've watched the movie, at the beginning of our movie, there's a reference made to, like, are we the ant farm? And there's this one scene where hundreds of people, thousands of people are running through this intersection. And it's meant to get you to think. So, if there was some entity up above Earth, let's say 10 miles away, and they look into a forested area, and they had the ability to see a human walking on the ground in a forested area, is it some sport to some entity to just go down and mess with us or try to grab us? Got to think outside the box. And I think in the movie, we explained this pretty well. And we explained it by using factual evidence. And I think some people still have a tough time with that. The cases we talked about in the movie, nobody had ever put them together in the way that we did. So, I think about it all the time. And there's several families who were in that movie who have lost loved ones. And I can think of one lady from Canada that lost her husband. And they had gone out many, many times to the woods together. A husband and wife. And while they're sitting in chairs next to a lake, really in the middle of nowhere, they see a UFO flying across over the lake, over some woods. And she goes, Dave, to me initially, I kind of thought it was some car headlights driving down a road. But my husband said, no, he's been to this area. There are no roads on that mountain. And then she said, then all of a sudden, this light made right turn, left turn, backwards, forwards, zigzagged. She said it obviously wasn't a car, but my mind tried to reconcile with what I was seeing. And then a short time later, her husband disappears and he's never found. And again, he's German, and he was a hunter. Coincidence? I don't know. I just report you the facts. So, do I think Julian Sands will be found? I do think so. Do I think Robert Gregory will be found? I hope so. Do I think Jonathan Aujay, the sheriff's deputy, will be found? No. I think Jonathan, if he would have been found, he would have been found in that first 2 or 3 years. I would expect that Robert Gregory and Julian Sands might be found this coming spring after the snow moves away, and they can bring some canines in to work off a cadaver smell. I do have great compassion for the families of these missing men. And I guess the side note to that is, if I have to die, I'd rather die doing something that I love doing. And I know Julian loved being in the mountains. and hiking. And I know Robert loved being in the mountains and hiking too. So I hope they have eternal peace, and I hope their family can work through this and maybe make them even a tighter group than they are right now. So I appreciate you being here. A reminder, people keep reminding me I should do this every time. Do not buy my books on Amazon. Please don't. You're going to get ripped off. Those are resellers selling. We don't sell on Amazon. Come to our website, NA, like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. Go to the online store. We sell our books $24.99. And we should have all of our books in stock within the next 2 weeks. I think all of the 411 books are in stock now, but some of the others are not, but they're ordered and they're on their way. So, last thing, personal locator beacon. I wish these men had them. If you know a family member that likes to hike alone like these guys did, get them a personal locator beacon. It's a good chance it could save their life. In the meantime, do something really nice for somebody when you go out. If everybody did nice things, I think everyone's attitude about life would change. I think we'd all be happier. I think that rather than taking and rather than stealing, and just doing something nice and letting people know that we are good people out there, the momentum has to shift. I encourage you to be careful when you're out there, even in a store. Be careful, but be nice. Have a great week. Paulides out.